right, is when you run out of LPT or you're not sure like how many credits you have per se, the issue then is it becomes this kind of complex problem you have to deal with where it's like, all right, so do I like if I get a spike of broadcasting traffic, right? So say like, and there are a lot of caveats here, but say based on your infrastructure, a ton of people start watching a stream or you have an influx of content that has to be streamed and you look at your reserves and you're like, oh, this is not great. I have 3 hours more of time more just left of trying to push this out, assuming it doesn't grow more. So the idea, like at a high level, would be to have a transactional system based within FTs to solidify an offer once you figure it out. And the high level structure would be kind of similar to how offers on eBay work. So you could say like if they want to buy 3 items at this cost, I'll accept within like this range. And then if they're willing to commit sooner for a higher volume, maybe I'll go lower, or if there's more risk to me, maybe I'll set a higher price. So like right now, the process of doing that's really manual and pretty slow. And a lot of times it's slow enough that someone broadcasting will probably have like a service interruption. So the idea is, give orchestrators a really easy way that doesn't involve them directly talking to a broadcaster, and also not to mention like the issue of them having to go and try to ping you somehow, and so yeah, so like to have a very very basic, I don't really even want to call it like a market making mechanism for transcoding time. I think that could be kind of interesting, and where it gets really interesting, so barring this notion of sort of agreements between orchestrators, which is kind of like how ISPs will peer, is the notion of whose stream is prioritized when you have capacity open up. So for instance, like that's something you could price at a much higher price. So if you were like, darn, I need X bandwidth or X time right away, you could, as an orchestrator, say, yeah, you can buy that, but that's going to be 3 times the cost of saying you might need some duration of time in an hour. And it goes without saying that this would be pretty complex to implement, but I think the idea at a basic level is saying like, like the first thing we try probably is I want to reach out to someone to get free time. And then what's kind of cool with that is, say like the basic rule that was baked in as default if you enabled this is that you could get up to say 2 hours from every orchestrator. So then like if you burn through 2 hours on one, then you can go to the next one and get an hour. So you're spreading the bandwidth, you're spreading kind of the outputs of this, right? And then if you find one you like, or you find one that's in like an AZ that you like, then you could say, hey, like this has worked well for my infrastructure. Here's my proposal. Can I lock this price in for like X time? So that was a lot, probably too much context to talk about this in a focused way, but something I was thinking about like a month ago that I think is potentially kind of interesting to dig into.
Well, there you have it. I think that's your topic.
So we'll call that the topic. Thank you.
Based on all you said, all I wrote down was pre-transcoding set by NFT, dynamic slash locking prices. That kind of.
I think that's great. That's like from that very scattered stream of consciousness. I think that's a great synopsis. Thank you for that.
All right, cool. We got your topic. Appreciate it. Okay, cool. Well, what we'll do is we'll start with introductions, and we'll go through everyone's topics. So, if you haven't joined us before, thank you for joining us. This is the Livepeer weekly water cooler chat, where we talk about all things Livepeer, whether it's orchestrating, delegating, broadcasting, transcoding, developing, anything you need for Livepeer related topics is very welcome and open here, and we hope that we can answer any questions that you might have. So what we'll do is we'll start with introductions and a topic. So if you have a topic in mind, please think of it now. If you don't have a topic, please come up with one. When I get around to you, you can introduce yourself and your topic, and then we'll go through them together and throughout this meeting. So I'll start with myself, and then we'll go through the rest. So I'm Titan. Been running the Titan node orchestrator pool. since April 2021. And today I have two topics. The first is, well, it's all about performance. The first question is about the SSDs versus HDDs and Nvme hard drives, and how much that affects the speed at which transcoding happens. So really, it just comes down to SATA drives versus Nvme, which I guess Nvme is about 10 times faster for writing to a hard drive. So just kind of curious if anyone's tested that. And then my second question is actually about minimum transcoding scores. If anyone could shed some light on like what is the minimum possible score you can get while keeping the live stream live and not having buffering on the end. Like, do we need to return video at a 2 score, so 2 times the speed? Does it have to be 5x, right? Does it have to, or can we get away with 1.2, right, where we're just delivering the video just back before, say, a 2-second segment is up, right? So I'm just kind of curious about that minimum performance threshold before we really should be worried about it. So those are my two topics, and we'll go through them later. 0xb79, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Yeah, I'm Brad. I've been running a B79 transcoder or orchestrator since March of 2021. Haven't named it yet. Really bad at naming things generally, so I'm just rolling with the address still. Topics today, I guess, since we just resubmitted the price per broadcaster enhancement to go Livepeer, I worked with John, the lead encoder, on that. I'm here to answer questions possibly on that. John can also help, of course. And the second one would be kind of like what's going on with Livepool. I've seen some things, but haven't paid a ton of attention to it. So I'm just kind of curious what's going on with that, and if that's how that might be impacting, getting new users on the new transcoders, if it's impacting live streams or anything like that.
Very cool. Thank you so much for joining us, Brad. Pawn, would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Evening, everyone. I'm Pawn. I've been running my Orchestrator since April. I have no topic today, so I'm just going to be listening in.
Very cool. Thank you so much for joining us. Ryan with Night Node, would you like to introduce yourself on a topic? I cannot hear you if you are speaking. No, sir, cannot hear you. Okay, we will wait for your mic. You might want to leave and come back, but yeah, your mic isn't working. We'll move on for temporarily here. Mike ZE, would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Hey guys, Mike Zuper. I'm running Zodap Orchestrator since February 2022. No topics. I'm really interested about the broadcasting stuff Transmetal's doing with the these weird pixel prices. I think I did some testing as well along those lines and found similar results, and just wanted to see what was shaking down there and what you guys have found. But that's it.
Very cool. Thank you so much for joining us. Elite Encoder, would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Yeah, hi, my name's John with Elite Encoder. I've been operating since about October last year. Coming up on our 1-year anniversary with Livepeer as an orchestrator. And my first question or topic today is to talk about strategies for counting payments owed to transcoders in a private pool. So we were fortunate to have someone reach out to us recently about partnering to do some transcoding. And, in light of some of the newer ways to run an orchestrator, such as like with a dummy transcoding account, I'm curious if there's some very simple ways to track payments. And then, of course, I can also help answer any questions about our price per broadcaster development I've been working on with B79.
Just to clarify, are you talking about using strategies for accounting payments in a private pool? Is that using an external like O/T setup where they are running their own O?
I think the most ideal, what I was thinking about is having like a separate combined OT as like a dummy transcoder account.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, we'll get into that later. But no, that's an interesting topic. Thank you so much for joining us, Elite. Ryan, would you like to introduce yourself again? Would you give it a try?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Hey, my name is Brian. I run Nightnode. As of September 29th, I've hit 1 year as being an orchestrator. My topic is if anybody would be interested in discussing giant whale orchestrators that don't transcode but call rewards, and whether or not that might be healthy for the environment, and if there should be any, I guess, security preventions, like where if you're not transcoding, then you're not recalling a reward, because basically it's just sucking out LPT without providing anything to the network, right? So that's my topic.
Very interesting topic. I don't think we've come up with that one before, so very cool. Thank you for joining us, Nightnode. Eric 3.0, would you like to introduce yourself and a topic?
Yeah, sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Eric, a core contributor with Livepeer, focusing on community management. I don't have a topic this week, but I do just want to give a big shout out to Transmetal, B79, Authority Null, and Papa Bear for handling some of the questions that were coming in over the weekend. There was definitely somebody in the chat who was spreading a little bit of FUD and had some opinions about how things work at Livepeer, and I really thought you guys, all of you, handled it super, super well. Very appreciative of how you kind of took on that challenge, and also took the time to really educate them on how things work. So yeah, big thanks.
Yeah, huge shout out to the community for teaming up, because I was getting a little aggro there for someone, so it was great.
Yeah, lately,
Yeah, he started it.
yeah, he did. Lately, and I think B79 was telling me it's really just we're getting more interest in Livepeer, right? So we've been getting some really interesting characters come along, and some of them are a little hostile.
Well, they say if you want to increase your success rate, you double your haters.
Absolutely.
And anytime you start getting any traction, that's actually when you're getting traction, when you start getting haters. So,
well, that may be true, but I just really wanted to express my gratitude to all of you for how you handled that, and just know that I notice all these things that are happening, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah.
Awesome.
This community is super tight for that, so it's really, really awesome. So, but thank you, Eric, for bringing that up. It's glad to see we have someone that's recognizing that from the Livepeer core team, and brings that to attention. So, big shout out to those individuals. So, very cool. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric. Alex with Syrinx Node. I mean, you've kind of already done your your topic, but why don't you introduce yourself and clarity on your topic if you'd like.
All good. Yeah, so I'm a TPM at Livepeer, and I run the Syrinx Node Orchestrator. And yeah, I'm pretty sure everyone here is already, well, we'll talk a little bit about formalizing agreements on transcoding or broadcasting work. And Ryan, I like your topic a lot. I've thought about that, and it's been a kind of an ongoing question in the back of my head as to why there hasn't been an improvement to the protocol to sort of push players who don't do any transcoding in a certain direction. But yeah.
All right, very cool. Thank you for joining us, Alex. Chase Media, would you like to introduce yourself on a topic?
Hi everyone, it's Rebecca with Chase Media. I am listening in today, and I just wanted to say hello to everyone. And I've been listening or watching the progress lately, and it's really fascinating to see all the improvements and community. So yeah, I just wanted to say hello, and hope everyone's really good. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Chase Media. Very good. Okay. Well, I think we should jump right into the first topic, which has been brought up, and I think is very interesting. Before we get into the very technical things, let's jump into this broad topic, which is I think it came up once when I first joined about 2 years ago. But yeah, this is an interesting topic, which is Ryan's topic about giant whale orchestrators that don't transcode, what they are doing and affecting the network. Ryan, do you want to give us a little explanation about what your thoughts are, what you're seeing, and what you think about this topic? Ryan, are you with us?
The whales got him.
The first one I call upon. Well, okay. Well, Alex with Syrinx Note also mentioned that he was interested in this topic. Alex, tell us your opinion, and why don't you kick us off? I don't think anyone wants to talk about this topic all of a sudden.
I'll happily talk about it. I'm sure.
Ben, kick us off. Let's go. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just generally frowned upon by us orchestrators that there are massive whales in the network with a ton of LPT who are doing nothing to contribute in any way, and are just collecting rewards. Some of them like 500 LPT a day to
I'm back.
1,000 LPT a day. So I don't know. It just seems kind of weird, especially with the participation rate climbing, and a lot of us who are doing the work, having our reward shrink while these whales are sort of chilling, just hanging out with 300,000 plus LPT doing absolutely nothing. It sort of just seems like they're gaming the system and creating money out of thin air.
Yeah, there's and sorry, I'm back now, but there was I think one orchestra, it's like 2.39 million LPT just sitting there, zero transcoding at all. It's 1.3k LPT per day, and it's just like you're taking up one of the 100 spots for the orchestrator list, and you're not contributing anything back to the network, and you're just sucking LPT out, right? So as far as like, and right now we have an issue where it's like getting stake is like pulling teeth. I'd rather go door-to-door salesman to get that, and it's just like you have 2.39 million just sitting somewhere that could be either distributed to an orchestrator, as that should, because then you're contributing back into the network, right? But that's just like, you would think if you're going to produce a product as an orchestrator, you'd want it to be that if you're getting the additional rewards from it, that you're contributing to the network that you're currently pulling money out of.
So I have the devil's advocate argument for this. So I'll bring up. And so the first question I have is, are we certain they're not contributing? It's very easy for us to say, well, they're not transcoding, but are we certain that they're not contributing to the success of the network?
Well, the whole point of LPT and staking, and correct me if I'm wrong, is to validate transcoders on the network, right? So them having an orchestrator doesn't really make sense in that regard. I don't know what they could be contributing that makes sense for them to have 2.8 million and collect rewards every day. It just seems a little weird to me, especially because it hurts everybody else on the network.
And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have 2.39 million. Like that's fine, completely
Right.
fine. But like it's like you're taking up an orchestrator spot from somebody who could do produce work, and then that could just be delegated to somebody else. That's how you could be contributing to the network. And if you're saying they're contributing to the network by doing like GitHub projects and stuff like that, then that's kind of two separate things, right? Like, you don't have to be those two aren't connected.
Yeah, and just to build on that too, since the new Explorer came out, it was supposed to tackle some of the issues with the separation of stake between some of the top orchestrators and the rest of us, and that it hasn't really worked in that regard. I think the separation has only increased. So 2.8 million on an orchestrator who isn't doing much, if that stake was distributed towards a network of orchestrators and transcoders who were working, it would balance out the network so much more. And I think there's a real issue right now with that separation of stake. There's zero balance there at all, and it just keeps getting wider and wider.
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Elite.
Well, just to add on to that, one thing that I've seen happen a bit, and I mean, I'm probably guilty of it a little bit myself, is the new Explorer is nice because you can see what the returns are, and you can filter LPT rewards. I think a lot of people are going for folks that have really low reward cut, which can be a great way to get your foot in the door and get started as an orchestrator. I think that has somewhat contributed to that minimum stake amount going up in a way. Some of it is actually spreading out down the board. I think.
Well, it is, but and I don't want to point fingers, but I've got to use a specific name here. But like the last 2 days, Varies made 250,000 worth of
Yeah.
LPT. While a lot of us are scrambling for like 60 here. Like emailing a million people trying to get our foot in the door there. So while a little bit of stake might be spreading around, like that jump in stake to one orchestrator is pretty demotivating to everybody else.
Like
Yeah, and
I've
I
always
think
I've always harped on like the that I like the way that Solana Beach and some other protocols do there, where it's like they collapse like say the top 10, and you can uncollapse that if you want, but then it says try contributing to some of the other people to help distribute the stake or something like that, and that way it pulls the people who are in 11th and below up, and the people who are in the top 10, if they get bumped, now they're in the 11th spot, right? And it helps reward, because right now, I mean, sure, if you don't know anything about this network at all, you might go based off of yield, right? But then you also might go off of delegated staking and go, wow, this guy has 11.65 90-day trailing ETH fees, 1.8 million LPT. I don't know how that's going to distribute to me, but that's a lot. So then you just dump it there without having to really look into it anymore. So it's like if you collapse that, or you make it where it's not as in your face as the number one option, or like all these giant people are the number one option, then you start looking at, okay, well, who's the next person? Even if you just are lazy and you pick the 11th person because that's the first full name on your list, it makes it where you start actually getting this rotation of LPT as people go up and down, because it's not just going to the first three,
Yeah, and just to clarify, this is no attack against Varies or anything. He
No.
obviously deserves the stake. It's just he happens to be the perfect example to show the separation that's in the network. That's all.
Yeah, but
yeah,
Agreed.
yeah, I wanted to add, and I think our goal is to try to get more performance based. That's one of the things we're working on with the reliability dashboard in a way, both for broadcasters and for delegators, really. But yeah, I mean, to my point earlier, I mean, yeah, I've been delegating, my extra stake with someone who probably doesn't have the best score, but has a really great reward cut. And so I think there's opportunity to drive. And when you look at some of the performance scores, it can actually get pretty competitive with a lot of the guys who are you think about delegating with someone who's performing pretty well. In many cases, they have a higher reward cut. That's just the way the economics of the network are. But anything you can do to drive it towards performance, I think, is a good win.
Well, so another thing, right? So like I know Titan was talking about like how much do you like, what does your performance need to be to, when you're transcoding? But like say you were to say if you have a 0% transcoding score across the board, you're not making a reward call because you don't qualify for the bare minimum. Like shouldn't there be a minimum spec where it's like if your transcoding score is below 5% or 5 or 50% success rate or whatever it is, then that should disqualify you based on performance, because you're not performing at a level that should be sufficient for the network. Because I think early on when we were starting to do side by sides where they were broadcasting on Livepeer and broadcasting on YouTube, we were pulling them up side by side to see like, is there jitters? Is it cutting off? Is the quality dropping? Is it dropping me down to 1080p or something like that? And I mean, if you have a network where you're not enforcing a quality standard, how are you ever going to become taken seriously as like all right, I can reliably use you as my primary service because you're offering a certain level of quality control based on how you guys take in your metrics for what's being produced, right? If you say we let everybody from 0.00 all the way up to 10.0, then you have a wide range. And if some people at 10 and some people at 0, or, you know, like, well, we had Binance getting tickets not left and right, but they had like a 0% score. I mean, at that point, you're saying we're allowing for a degradation in service and rewarding for it.
There is a suspension on the broadcaster nodes. I think it's only like an hour though. It might be a day. Maybe what you're saying is the suspension should be longer, a week, 2 days, 3 days, whatever it might be.
It wasn't the whole problem with having performance in like the selection process that performance was always subjective to centralized service like Livepeer Inc.
Yeah.
Like how do you who gets to test the performance and make that decision, right?
At times, I think a lot of the concern with that was if you like, depending on how quickly you update that score. And of course, right now it doesn't happen that often, but you can end up with these weird cascading issues where if there was one thing that affected, say, half of the orchestrators in one availability zone, then yeah, like there's a rate of change you want to stay below, and that's what was described to me. And it makes sense to an extent, but I think still worth thinking about.
So I want to quickly, hopefully I'm not cutting anyone off, but I want to bring us back around just to the single 2-point-something million orchestrator, the whale, because I think overall, yes, I think stakes should be more widely distributed, and yes, you know, we want to have healthy network, and I think the Explorer is a good upgrade, a step in the right direction, blah blah blah. But like let's just focus on the actual whale who's actually not transcoding. And I quickly want to ask the devil's advocate question, which is it actually unhealthy for the network, like to have a 2.1 million delegator not transcoding? Is it unhealthy because in a permissionless network, shouldn't it be healthy regardless of the orchestrators?
I think I'm looking at this because I mean they have 105,000 self-stake, 38K plus rewards in 7 months, right? I'm looking at it like more like it's a parasite, right? You're pulling away from it without contributing anything from it, and because we're offering a product and not just like a token, I think it makes sense that there's some kind of minimum qualification, the same way that there's a minimum qualification to actually be able to transcode. Why is there no minimum qualification for taking an inflationary reward?
I think my concern is that like there's 100 slots, right? Somebody who has a GPU wants to put it on the network can't because this guy's sitting here just parasitic, right? Like just taking. So like he's preventing somebody from getting on the network that could actually provide the service that we all want. So like that's 100. That's it. You got 100 out of the world of transcoders, and you get no more. And now we're at 99. And how many other folks are? There might be folks that are on there without stake that are just holding a slot. I want those to be looked at too. They're not transcoding, but they maybe not even calling rewards. But why are they registered and active?
Yeah,
It's a fair question. And I think the first kind of action that would maybe be implemented to help this would be the big question of when and what are the right reasons to increase the number of slots available to to have a valid orchestrator, right? And with good reason, the requirement of conducting work per se is still like to be on that list. You don't have to be running a transcoder and an orchestrator. You can just be sitting on that list. So I think there's valid room to discuss if there should be a minimum work provided, even if it's not you running a GPU, but like there has to be some kind of work done. And I think in a lot of ways that's more of a semantic back and forth than a what are these people doing. But I do think there's valid concern with staking providers that are doing this. So like Figment, and so clearly like because they're using this as leverage And of course, initially they probably bought a bunch of LPT when it was worth almost nothing.
Mhm.
And I think the question is like, are they doing this really because they like the network, or are they doing it because they're leveraging someone else's stake to do this? And I think that's a valid question. It's also tough, right? Because you can't go and say, well, like let's kick these people off, and then we'll see. Like the event of all the LPT flowing out. I mean, that wouldn't be good for anyone, obviously. But I think it's a
It's kind of
valid.
not like kicking people out, right? Like kicking out requires some entity to say you deserve to be kicked out. Like,
Yep.
I just feel like if you're sitting there, and again, to Elite's point is, we're transcoders, right? We're orchestrating. You're running a pool. You got some GPU. I mean, there's definitely like ways to quantify performance and value. Like we can do that based on, hey, when's the last time you successfully transcoded a stream? Like it's some of the basic things like that could be at least looked at as criteria.
I will say though, we have to be very careful about the definition of someone who's doing a good job, because just because they have no score doesn't mean that they can't point their service URI to someone who has a high score and then use their score and make it look
Yep.
like that. This is the argument with Livepeer Academy, which is a second node I have. It does zero transcoding.
Oh,
Livepeer Academy does zero transcoding, but it has a high score because the service URI is pointed to Titan node, right? So what happens is Livepeer Academy wins the work, points it to the service URI of Titan node, and then Titan node goes, "Oh, I'll take that stream, thanks." And then Titan node receives all the work and the tickets. But yet the performance board shows that Livepeer Academy is in fact doing a wonderful job. So in fact, one of these whales could easily point their service URI to the person who has 10 out of 10. They would also receive 10 out of 10. But they just wouldn't be getting the rewards for the work they do. It would be to who they point it to. So I suspect there's actually whales in there that have good scores, but still don't technically transcode.
That's just more problems.
Right? So like this is what I mean like about performance. Like you just like Livepeer Academy does zero transcoding, but it has a great score. So like just be really careful about how performance is viewed on the performance board. So this is why restricting someone or doing something based on performance is going to be exceptionally tough, because it is just a lot of loopholes. Yeah. And that being said too, like people in my pool that are in Indonesia, I have an individual in Indonesia who would just can't wait to join and transcode, but like there's no ingest nodes in Indonesia. The nearest one is Singapore, and he can't really keep real time. And I told him he needs to have better internet, and he's like, man, in Indonesia, like you don't get better internet. Like he's like, this is I have the best, and it's 40 megabits upload. Like that's it. That's the best you can get. I mean, unless you want commercial stuff, which is like outrageously expensive. And so the question is, are we comparing apples to apples when it comes to performance in Indonesia versus America, right? So it gets a little more complicated too. So, but I just wanted to bring up the point of the service URI, because one of these whales could easily point their service URI to one of you, and you would get all of its work, and they would get a 10 out of 10 score, and it would all look very nice. But they don't know to do that.
Yeah, that in of itself seems like a bit of a security issue that should be addressed through some kind of like domain validation mechanism.
That sounds like another issue that needs to be fixed, not something that should stop us from doing anything about large whales. That doesn't really seem like a very healthy loophole that should be in the system at all.
I just
It
wanted to bring
makes
it
no
up.
sense.
I just wanted to bring it up.
I thought about it before
Good
too.
to know that
actually.
exists.
Yeah.
It's just a bit silly because like there's a lot of orchestrators running a second O as well on the network. Like you have Livepeer Academy, and there really isn't 100 active orchestrators. There's really like maybe 60, 50. maybe 70, right? But you just have a bunch of O's running second orchestrators and transcoders. So in reality, all the numbers are completely messed up. You know, when we do the analytics every 3 months or every quarter, you know, all those numbers don't really make any sense. The usage climbing recently could just be Livepeer tests, and that will probably be in the quarterly report. So I think I think there's a lot that should be looked at on the whole performance thing and all the statistics we see, because a lot of it is broken. But I don't think that should get in the way of us doing anything about massive whales that aren't transcoding.
Another devil advocate thing. Will it work itself out once transcoding fees 10x, 50x, 100x from here? Like, is there a point at which you can say, hey, I'm a whale, I'm self-delegating for LPT rewards, but based on, you know, participation rate being over 50% for like a year, now instead of 20%, we're getting like 4% on LPT inflation. It turns out ETH rewards are actually the bulk of the rewards. So you could say, well, now it's no longer lucrative to self-stake, right?
Right,
Would this
but
work
they're
itself out?
but they're the reason the participation rate is climbing so fast in a sense, and it would take a massive shift, which I think will happen over time. And this is just my opinion, but it really will take a significant shift in demand for ETH rewards to actually mean something, really. So I don't know. I feel like the reason the participation rate climbs so fast is because there are whales making 1,300 LPT a day doing nothing.
Yeah, but the participation rate's over 50% right now. So every
I
day
know,
inflation
yeah,
is going down.
right. It doesn't help that there are whales who are doing nothing and helping to push the participation rate higher every day.
I mean, it's I like my hope would be instead of saying you guys need to, like, obviously I don't want anybody to leave, right? You just want it to be distributed differently, right? So if you're saying this person can't, I mean, because apparently they have 105,000 for their own, and then the rest of the 2.7 million is all other, I guess, other external delegators. You'd hope that then that would spread out, something leaving a colony, ants leaving a colony. They just all spread out in different directions, and then they all land in it better, distributes to those that are participating, and then that way you're actually getting like people that actually actively working on something are getting delegated stake. They benefit from it. The network benefits from it. You know, they can grow, and then we can, you get a cycle of development out of it.
Yeah, and I understand like what Alex said too. If it's just being leveraged, maybe it's a massive company and they're just using the platform to leverage other people's stake. And in that case, well, there isn't really anything that can be done about that. That's totally normal. So I don't
That's
know.
true.
It still just feels really, it just feels wrong.
Doesn't jive well.
Nah.
No, end of the day, fat stake would get distributed between loads of orchestrators. Orchestrators can grow, provide a better service as well, so it's gonna would make a lot of lives easier, to be honest. And network is benefiting from better orchestrators,
Yeah,
faster ones using better GPUs.
exactly. No P400s.
Okay, well, this is an interesting topic, but I also want to move on to other topics because I think it's important. I guess one last thing to talk about this topic is there a solution to this? I know we kind of bounced it around, and like, could we send payments we send LPT as, like, if we switch to LPT as the payment method, if we sent to LPT with every ticket, like maybe inflation comes from winning tickets. Like I don't know if that's gonna work, but I'm just bouncing it off. Does anyone want to propose a solution they might think is viable?
Actually, speaking of what you just said, I mean, have you guys ever thought about, like, if you use it gave the option to pay in LPT, right? Because that way you could get it either or, but then it would help with, because like if you are purely inflating or diluting your currency, right, then you would think that your the price of that is going to go down and down and down. I mean, like look at like Pancake Swap and those really high return currencies, right? Like they have no other use other than just staking and getting more, right? That's currently kind of how LPT works, right? So when that reward rate goes down, the value just drops off with it because there's nothing else to do with it. But if you can use it as kind of like a um, as a funder for the work to be completed, then now you have upward pressure because people might buy that to fund the broadcasting. And then on a separate note, I love the idea of burning currency if you're going to be creating new, because that's the same way that like you would work the normal economy, right? The Fed burn takes in money, destroys it, and then we print new money, right? So it kind of balances out um, the flow of money over time instead of just consistently putting more and more out. But
Yeah, and I also think another solution, and maybe more of a long-term one, is just better documentation and maybe some tweaks to how the ETH payments work. I really think if it wasn't such a dice roll to know when you're going to get paid for the work you're actually doing, we might not have to have this conversation. But
mm,
I just since I joined almost a year ago, there's been a lot of discussion of and a lot of investigation just trying to figure out how the PM system works, and it, there hasn't been much progress there. So if like we knew when we were going to get paid, that would help a lot. But we can't count on ETH payments to build our infrastructure because it's like being at a casino. So that would help a lot.
casino has improved. It just hasn't improved that much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Okay. Quick note before we move on to the next topic, which I think is going to be surrounding performance, because we're kind of on that topic. John with Elite Encoder, just real quick, I see your orchestrator it's on the new list. It says you've been active 4 days on the Explorer. I don't know if you've noticed that.
Yeah, I had a little accident a couple nights ago. It was really late, didn't have any sleep, and was trying to unbond a little bit of LPT and just hit the all and then the unbond button, and then next thing you know, I was at 0 streams. So yeah,
And that's
I
why your
freaked
time
out.
active is reset.
Yeah, so I freaked out and grabbed some LPT. The Explorer was glitching for a minute, couldn't rebond right away. So I grabbed some other LPT, put it in there, and got it back and going quickly. Was made it worse. It was the hurricane night where we were worried about hurricanes hitting. So if for some reason my SSH wouldn't connect, so I was convinced that power went out for somehow. And we had power backups and stuff, but it was late at night and I didn't know if something had happened. And yeah, so it took about 30 minutes to get it back up and going. But yeah, it was a nightmare. And then I didn't know what was going to happen when the next round started again. So I made sure to rebond and get back into a status where I didn't know if some delegators were going to drop or what was going to happen with that. But it happened at the beginning of the round, so I guess I got a little lucky there.
Very interesting. I didn't realize it resets your time active date, because I did that once too.
Yeah.
I unbonded everything, lost all my streams. I went, oh crap, I'm supposed to always keep at least 0.1, LPT in there or whatever, just to keep the orchestrator active. And yeah, totally unbonded and deregistered my node. And I was like, oh, oops. Okay. Now we know what happens when you unregister your thing. You get set to the back of the Explorer for I think 90 days or something.
No, it's 42 days. I know that from experience.
Been there on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was not pleasant. And I opened a ticket with the Explorer on the Explorer repo to get that fixed. But it looks someone else had already opened an issue for it too.
Yeah,
just to have like some little warning dialogue.
Yeah, I think it should have been open for me as well. So I did exactly the same as you did.
Cool. Okay. I just wanted to bring that up real quick. Okay. I'm gonna be a little selfish here. Let's talk quickly about GPU performance, not GPU, machine performance. Has anyone tested NVMe hard drives versus SATA hard drives for transcoding performance?
Have not. I would assume if anybody here might be Mike. Mike, have you ever looked into that?
Wasn't there? There was definitely someone who had a lot of like distinct comment. Was it you, Mike? Who?
It was Elite, I think, was doing a
Yeah,
lot of
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
John. John was
I've
doing
done a
the
little
work. I
bit
was
with that.
tracking with
Yeah.
him though. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll give you an idea of what I know about that. So I do have a box that has an SSD on it, and I did a little transcoding on it before, but I really haven't measured the differences between SSD and NVMe. But what I have done was, for a while there, I was running an ARB node and Orchestrator on the same machine, and I've got superstitious about it enough to decide to run those on separate boxes. But back at the time, I was making sure to run the ARB node on a secondary NVMe as far as its data store, and then the transcoding on the primary NVMe. And of course, I tried all kinds of different configurations. And at some point, I was thinking about, I think when we started to move the ARB node off the machine, I experimented with transcoding on the secondary NVMe. And by this, I mean a motherboard would have 2 slots for an NVMe. One goes to your south bridge connection, the other one goes directly to the CPU, usually the primary system drive. So I did observe like increased latency when you're, this is not on the transcode piece, transcode time specifically, but just in Grafana looking at node exporter, where you might do 2 to 5 milliseconds wait time on your segments coming in and out of the hard disk on the primary NVMe, but on the secondary NVMe, it was like 10 milliseconds plus. So there is a difference between using a primary NVMe slot or a secondary. I can speak to that.
And you just mean like going through a PCI lane that's going directly to the CPU, or one going through like a secondary controller?
Right. Yeah. Now the
Cool.
controller concept, like I think that one's probably going to be just about as good as CPU. I haven't tried that either. So if you had like a PCI adapter, that might be the exception. I haven't tested that out. Those usually
Okay.
perform pretty nominally.
Look, I can tell you right now, the end of the day, your disk I/O is going to be dependent on a variety of factors. And if you just monitor the I/O today, I think, SATA, NVMe, these faster drives are probably sufficient for, Livepeer streams. Now, if you're Vires and you're getting 100 streams and those stream segments are being downloaded to the disk and also being, managing multiple TCP connections, you probably have a lot more memory. You might be swapping, like there's a whole host of things that are there. But I think if you're going to be doing like record stores where they take the actual segments and save the transcoding to disk, those kinds of things, yeah, you better have a good, disk array that's going to give you significant IOPS. And to Elite's point is, if you go into your system that's running and you at a minimum install tools like IOstat or get some monitoring like node exporter in place, just look at the IO from your metrics and you'll see, like, if you see IO waits occurring, that's going to add milliseconds, maybe more, to your entire stream to be processed, whether it's transcoding time or if it's IO time because the disk drive is busy, you're still going to have to pay that price. So I would say monitor, look at your system because it's going to vary for you. And the worst thing you could do is over engineer it and put all this hardware in place and you get the same results you're getting now because it doesn't matter, right? Just get those metrics in place.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a
And
good
John,
point.
when you were saying primary versus secondary SSD, did you mean that you were relying on like the boot SSD, like where the OS had been
Right.
installed, and that
Yeah.
and that had lower latency than if you were running it on a second, like
That's
a path
correct.
on the secondary disk.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. One last question about this NVMe thing is, if you are transcode benchmarking locally, all you're doing is writing to the hard drive. You're reading from the hard drive. You're writing to the hard drive. Then I'm just trying to figure out. People in my pool have like basically the same GPU, the same distance, the same everything, and one is like doing much quicker than the other. And I know it's like internet probably is the major factor, but it's like, is there a chance that the hard drive, because it has to write to the hard drive and then read from the hard drive and send it through the internet? So like, is that a bottleneck that you wouldn't necessarily see on a transcoding benchmark?
If they got the old school hard disk drives with the platters that spin, yeah, you're gonna notice it. But if you're talking about like a guy's got an NVMe and a guy's got a SATA drive, will it be that significant that you could see it? I don't think so. Like that's gonna be hard to tell.
Oh, maybe these people are running spinning disks.
They also
You know
might
what I mean?
like a really bad SSD, because like there's some SSDs that have an incredibly inefficient buffer, and a lot of these are actually made by Intel, and they show up in like pre-built gaming PCs a lot, where like there's no way to give like priority to certain things. So in certain cases, you can see like freakishly bad latency and very erratic like random writes and reads. So that could be, yeah, but like Mike said, they could also just have a hard drive.
Okay, maybe that's like a requirement, because like I'm just trying to, like, there's just weird inconsistencies with performance. So this falls into my next question, which is, what is the minimum round trip time needed for Livepeer? Like we have the scores on Grafana, we have our scores like, and so a 2 means you're taking 2 milliseconds, returning it in 1, right? And 1 means you're returning 2 and 2, right? So like, what can we get away with? Right now, my pool is set to 2 as the minimum, but like, is 1.5 sufficient? Like, can I decrease that, you think? Or like 1.2? Like how quickly does it have to reach the broadcaster again before the broadcaster switches?
I think that's really a lot of it. If I'm not mistaken, I thought that stream selection was, at least that part of it, was partially based off performance. So it almost seems sometimes like broadcasters come and go, like they're testing to see out of a certain selection set who can do it the fastest, and then it goes with the other one. I'm not sure
I
if
was
that
under
part's
the
true.
assumption that, and again, you guys tell me if I'm wrong here, but I thought, to your point, John, is that the call goes out through an orchestrator ping request from the broadcaster, and they have 1 second to return. And if you don't return within that 1 second, you're not going to be part of the selection for that stream that's going to get distributed. But once the stream is sent, if it takes 5 seconds for it to come back, it takes 5 seconds, right? Like, I don't know if there's anything in there that says the segment has to be back within a second, or it kills it,
No,
or it hands it to
Well,
someone else.
it
You're
has
real
to.
time.
It has to. The selection process says, as long as your last segment was returned in real time, it does not consider performance of how quickly that real time actually was. Just as long as it was real time, then performance is not considered. Only is it considered when people don't have a known last time that anyone has returned. Wait, is that how it works? Crap, I forget.
And
Go ahead, John.
oh, sorry. I know one component is obviously the real time, like you were saying. In 2 seconds is what we look at with the test streams. I think, but I may not be, I'm not sure, but I think that some of it might be related to the segment duration that a broadcaster's using. So, like, for example, a keyframe interval or something like that can affect how that real time actually plays out for you.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out like I'm gonna do this test myself. I'm gonna go set up a transcoder. I'm gonna go test some as soon as we have the 0 price per pixel. I'm gonna actually start testing my own pool of transcoders because I have a few now. Like I think I have like 27 people transcoding for me. So I can start sending them streams and seeing what the quality of the video is coming back as based on their performance. So I'm going to test to see kind of what the minimum is, but I'm just wondering if anyone has experience with this or knows.
That's a really good idea. I haven't messed with it at all. I think Mike might have tried at some point. But yeah, if you can actually get some playback from your own transcoders and see what it looks like.
Right? Like, I just want to know, like, if you're above 1.5, meaning, or, like you send out a 2-second transcode, it comes back in a second and a half. And it's consistently doing that, so it never bumps up over real time. So as long as you're back within real time, and even if you're just back in real time, like even like 1.8 seconds, will that keep the stream and will it be high quality? Because if so, then optimizing over 1.5 return is the point is moot. Like there's no point, right? Like as long as you can get it back quick enough, then you're fine, right? So I've been just trying to figure this out because obviously, as you guys know, it's real choppy water for the say. Like it's so hard to determine whether I'm losing a stream because a transcoder is not fast enough or because of the Livepeer network is just choppy, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't have access to these people's machines, so it's just like impossible for me to tell.
So would you just set up a broadcaster for that, or would you use Livepeer's stream tester tool thingy that they have?
I have no idea. I think I just set up a broadcaster, set it to 0 way per pixel, whitelist my own address, and then just start shooting streams and seeing what the logs come back.
Yeah, and it's what we've done a lot of testing with in our development of the price for broadcaster, and we do have some binaries that we could share, sort of like a pre-release. I think at this point, I know even before we developed this new price per broadcaster, I've been using the test net to send stuff to test orchestrators on my on one of my nodes. That's what I was working with Transmental on a few weeks back, and I have a secondary box that I think has had a lot of issues with transcoding, and it's got a 1080 in it. We're trying to get to run, but we put a 1660 in it. Everything that we've got, and it just seems to have a lot of trouble with these heavier rendition streams, and I think it's just like a configuration issue in Linux. We're going to wipe it soon and start over, but to that point, it's a really good testing mechanism to do that, and make sure that they are coming back regularly. I don't remember exactly what I was seeing on the when I was watching the stream. I think it mostly seemed to work fine, but what Transmetal explained was a lot of times you'll see the M3U8 file will drop the like even though it'll continue to give you the original source file. So the stream doesn't really go away, but the transcoding part of it could be affected, like if you're having those types of issues. So your segments, if you're asking for 3 or 4 different profiles, you may only be getting the source. And that would be kind of your testing point for that type of an issue, I think.
Okay. Great. So, yeah, we don't really know. We have to just test it out to see how this goes. Because I have it arbitrarily set to 2. Like, I figured if you can return a 2-second segment in 1 second, like, that should be sufficient, right? But, like, and my pool seems to have the right amount of streams compared to my stake compared to other orchestrators. So I don't think I'm losing streams because of performance for people that are 2 and above on 4 segment renditions. But I'm just wondering how, like, I got some people that like 1.5. They're great. They're in great locations where I want them to be, but are they ruining the pool because they're not quite quick enough, or is 1.5 fast enough, right?
Yeah, and one theory that I have about that too is it seems like it's sort of like a reputation type of model, so in a way it's sort of like the weakest link. So if you kind of burn a broadcaster because they end up hitting one of your nodes, um, they may not, they may not get an opportunity to hit one of your good working nodes. But I guess it depends on how you're routing it, if it's DNS weighted or geographically weighted, or if it's in a situation where you're doing one O with multiple Ts. That O might have a T on its network that could perform well, but maybe went to one that didn't, and then you miss out on work for a while because of that other T.
Yeah, you're explaining my fear exactly. So that's what I've been working
Yeah, and
on.
I've noticed that behavior as well. Even if 4 of your nodes are in tip-top shape, if one of them has issues, you might not get as much work on any of your nodes for a while. Definitely
Yeah, and
noticed
that
that.
probably has a lot to do with the Livepeer network's routing itself. I think organically across, if you had a lot more diverse broadcasters out there, you may not see that happen as often. But
Right.
they kind of blacklist you if you're not working well across all of them.
Cool. Okay, well, I think that answers my performance question. Basically, still gotta do some more testing, figure out that stuff.
How do you measure your scores with your transcoders? Is that built into your software?
Yeah, the software reads each segment that comes back, how quickly it came back, and then so it takes the source duration and divides it or whatever, calculates it against the return time, and then gives you the score.
Oh, okay.
So say you get a stream, it lasts 1 minute, and they're all 2 seconds. So it'll say, okay, well you have 30 segments at 2 seconds equals 1 minute, and your total transcoded time of all those segments is 30 seconds. So you're at a score of 2, right? But people with 1, 2 segments, 3 segments, they're all really they're all in the 4, 8s, 5, 4, these are random people with crappy computers, and they're returning 1 segment no problem, right? 480p single segment, everyone's just killing it. It's just the 4 segment stuff. But
yeah,
it's the
that's what I see too.
It's the 4 segment stuff that pays the money, right? That's
right.
Those are the big bones, right? So I want to optimize for keeping those streams. I don't want to just optimize for 480p's, right?
Yeah, I'll say I've seen a lot of those come and go, and sometimes I theorize that they're just stream tests because they come in ridiculously high numbers of them at a time sometimes. But we are working on optimizing our stuff a little bit to add more density to our transcoding. To try to help. Hopefully, because you do sometimes see let's say you're running a lot of 480s, and one of those heavier renditions comes in, 4 profiles, and I've actually seen the 480s start to go down number of those profiles, which should be able to handle just fine. It seems like those heavier renditions are slowing down everything just to a certain degree. I mean, you don't see any spikes on your average times, maybe with the 4 profile, but yeah.
There's also another problem with a lot, as I've been monitoring all my transcoders, there's been a lot of issues with segments coming in out of order. And then, it's just really weird. Like you get 5 segments in the same second, and the transcoder, it doesn't order them properly, and then the broadcaster leaves. And so if you ever go to my dashboard, you'll see this little asterisk beside scores. And that means that the amount of segments that were sent in is not equal to the amount of segments sent back. And it's because the broadcaster left. It didn't want to receive the segment before we finished transcoding it. Which is really odd behavior, and it happens all the time.
Yeah, Papa Bear was talking about that last week or a couple of weeks ago as well, and he said usually they're followed with an orchestrator busy error, and it just seems to be messing things up. And I don't know if those are Livepeer tests or something's a little screwed up.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's that too, which has been difficult. But, oh well, speaking of pools, real quick. Brad? Oh, Brad's not here. I left. He was talking about what's going on with Livepool.
Yeah,
What?
something's going on with Livepool. They just haven't been paying for like 9 months, 10 months, and seems to be some stagnation there.
After I got hacked, I messaged him saying, "Hey, can you change over my old pay, like the amount that I had transcoded for you, over to this new address because it's just a database change. You have to go in there and just change my address for the new one, right?" And that was, I think, like 7 months ago, and he messaged me like 3 days ago, being like, "I can't find your address in there." And I'm like, "Dude, I'm so long gone at this point. Like, there's no point in transcode for you. That takes you that long."
Yeah, I think someone from Livepeer did talk to him or them or whoever it is. I think Nico is part of that team.
Was
Um, was or yeah, not the Livepeer team. He was part of Livepool, or he's still supposed to be running it. Or something, I don't know. But yeah, someone reached out from the core team, and he's been a little more responsive to transcoders who are trying to figure out what's going on there. But even still, I think Papa Bear's waiting on a payment, and it doesn't look like the pool is being maintained at all. I think the dashboard is not working properly. And I believe Nico is looking for someone else to run it. So he's kind of there are a bunch of transcoders who are just hung out to dry and they're not receiving payments. So when people come into the Discord and they ask, "Hey, can I transcode with Livepool? You know, is it worth it?" It's kind of our obligation to tell them that maybe it's not a good idea right now to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't just sold it because it would be, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it would be a pretty interesting proposition if you were someone like Staked to be like, oh, cool, for $12,000 we get a relatively turnkey pool. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that a good portion of the stake on that is Livepeer's stake as well. Um, so I don't know. It's just a bit of a weird
that is
situation.
weird.
Though.
Yeah, but you could
But-
easily give them the source. I think. Well, the thing is, Livepool is open source, so it's not like
Is it?
yeah, it is. I tried to
Oh,
follow.
cool.
Yeah, Livepool is 100% open source. Well, not 100%. I don't know about the dashboard. The actual front end is not. But Livepool
The
is
accounting methods.
It was like the payment system and all that, like that.
Yeah, that's all open source.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's
No
just
way.
yeah. When I went to go build tight node pool, I was like, oh, like Nico, like he built this working group, pool working group, which never even had its first meeting. And then I was like, hey, I messaged him. I'm like, hey, like, do you mind sharing the source code with me? He's like, dude, it's on my GitHub, like it's open source. And I'm like, oh. And I started going through it, and I started like trying to figure it out, and I like downloaded it and compiled it, and then he's like, I'm like, how does this work? And he's like, oh, I just made some modifications here and there, and like it's just a modified version of Go Livepeer. And I was like, with an accounting system built into it. And I like look at it and I'm like, okay, first of all, this is like way outdated. So I don't know how to merge. I don't know how to take his customized code, merge it with the new code, and like not have it break. Because I was like, why haven't you updated his? He's like, oh, well, compatibility errors. And I'm like, well, I don't know how I'm going to figure this out. So, and his accounting just seemed really primitive, actually. It was just like, I'm like, oh, like there's not much in here.
Was it like a price per ticket?
I don't know. I don't know. I didn't really get that far. I just looked at it and went, you know what? By the time I figure out what is going on here, I could probably just do something myself.
Are you still doing yours the same way, or have you changed yours? And are you willing to disclose that?
What do you mean by same way?
How you were doing it previously when I had talked to you like 5-6 months ago
Well, I guess I'm doing it the same way. Like I just
per pixel.
per pixel. Yeah. So what I do is I calculate the video, the profiles that gets transcoded. So So if there's 4 profiles that come through 720p whatever, I multiply those by the amount of pixels in that profile. So and then I calculate how much the transcoder gets based on how many pixels they transcode.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm paying them per pixel, but then I'm only getting paid in probabilistic micropayments. So there's a bit of a tough gauge there. But I also have an uptime multiplier, so people start at a really low multiple, and then they can go up. And the idea behind the pool is that if you get to the full uptime multiplier, which is 32x, you'll actually get more than I get paid. So you get 105% of what a pixel is worth. And the idea is that people in the pool can actually earn good money. They can actually earn more than if they ran their own orchestrator node. But that's made up by the abundant amount of people that are less than the 100%. So, yeah.
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's just some game theory stuff I tried out.
It's a good system though.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the idea is because I want to reward people that are in my pool for a long time, and I want
Is it
to.
still like 3 years or something?
It's 405 days.
Okay.
It's just over a year to get to full uptime multiple. But you start out at 3.3%, so
Mhm.
you don't get very much in the beginning. But you get LPT, so that's cool.
That's really interesting strategy. I guess this kind of dives into my question a bit. So I have someone who reached out wanting to get involved with Livepeer and start transcoding, and I wanted to partner up, and I think they're in the South American region. So I've really been looking to actually advertise that type of a role, but haven't had time to get to that. So it's great that it's kind of landed on my lap. One idea I had, I'll just run this idea by you guys, see if it makes sense, because we have ran multiple nodes, one in Ohio, one in North Carolina. We've also had multiple nodes at our North Carolina data center. And where the tickets come in, and these are by nodes, I mean separate orchestrators, with local transcoding on them. And, an orchestrator will win a ticket on its own, and I noticed we could shut down an orchestrator for a while and turn it back on and start transcoding with that one. And it seems it's pretty much in proportion to how much work that orchestrator has done. So if the orchestrator wins a ticket and I turn it off, and then I run the other one for a while and I switch back, I know it might be a little while till that other one, if it starts transcoding again, gets another ticket. That's kind of what I've seen. Is that just, does that make sense? That maybe we could, have a separate O setup. Obviously, it would be like the dummy account mechanism, right? So, and send the tickets to our account, but actually just count up the tickets that they're getting, and then pay those out in a very simplistic way.
So what you're saying is they have their own dummy account, which they have loaded up with like a little bit of ETH, and every ticket they redeem, you would obviously see that on chain, so you could pay them back a proportion of what they send to you.
Correct. Yeah.
And then you would automate that somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, you could.
That's actually a good idea. I never thought of it that way. I wish, yeah, because I've been wrestling with this idea of how to get people setting up O/Ts, but the problem always came down to like the GeoDNS is now your gateway to them getting work, and you have to like auto add them and auto remove them if they're not online.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
You just, and then you have no control. If they run their own you have really no control over like, how much work they're actually doing, and how much, how much work they're actually doing, their performance, their uptime. I mean, you could figure all that out through like pinging and certain things.
You could have them run a monitoring stack as well, right? So that you could get all their data and the Prometheus data and see how well they're doing.
Yeah. The other thing was, it just slipped my mind. It was something to do with yeah, I can't remember. It's something to do with security, but that's this. As soon as I thought of this before I realized you can create dummy accounts. So my problem
Yeah,
was always security, but now that I realize
right.
you can do that.
Yeah, and also on top of that, this is what makes Portainer so powerful, is because you can add users to your Portainer server, and you can deploy stacks for people, right? So you can say, okay, you want to transcode for me, put this edge agent on your server, and now you can log into our Portainer UI and deploy some templates. So go ahead and deploy Prometheus, deploy this Orchestrator transcoder stack, and you're done, right? They don't have to configure anything. They can just use the templates that you provide them, and they have a user that they can access through a UI.
Yeah,
Great addition.
that's actually a good way of doing it, Elite. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think as far as long as it's mathematically accurate, and I think it is, because it's really the orchestrator itself is counting up tickets and stuff that it's done. The broadcaster does the same thing. And then I also was thinking, is there any advantage to? I'm pretty sure you can have multiple dummy transcoder accounts, just to get the accounting right. Um, rather than giving them the same one you're using on your other. Oh,
Yeah,
um,
each transcoder in your pool could technically have their own dummy account.
yeah, I think that would be the best way to do it.
But then, yeah, then just either they have to load it up with 50 cents in ETH, or you do.
Yeah,
which is really low risk for that. That's a good way of doing it. I never thought of it that way.
yeah, that sounds like it's a plan. Then, yeah, thanks for validating the theory. That's probably what we'll go with, and as long as they've got a good connection, and try to get some more nodes spun up.
That's something I might switch to eventually, because having a pool, like having all the work go through my nodes, is tough, because I've been thinking of the bottlenecks, and like I have like my Toronto node or something, it can handle like 200 streams, and it's like my VPS can't, the bandwidth isn't even high enough for that. I'd have to get higher bandwidth. The other thing is that if you do run a pool setting, I will let you know that people come and go frequently. So you're going to want an automated system for your DNS, because the nice thing about having a pool where you're connecting to your standalone O is that if they leave, it graciously leaves. So when you click exit, it tries to finish the work, and then the orchestrator gives the work to another transcoder.
Right.
So in my pool, you can kind of just spin it up, transcode while you're online during the day. When you go to bed at night, you can turn your computer off. It'll spin down. So people can kind of come and go into the pool as they please. Whereas if you're doing the O/T thing, I don't know how gracious that can get.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, the DNS caching and stuff is a risk. Yeah, I guess it just depends on how reliable the partnership is, or the person who's transcoding, that type of a thing.
Yeah, it depends on the relationship you want with your pool operators as well. Like, are these people that are professionals that you want to deal with regularly, who are on the up and up, or like Livepool and my pool, we're targeting like I'm targeting people that literally can double click a button. Like you double click, they follow the instructions, and it patches it for you, it connects for you, it you don't have to do anything, right? So I'm trying to attract just the gamers, really.
Makes sense.
So it depends on kind of what your
yeah, we may still
is.
deploy like a VPS there. I mean, obviously, it's would need to be something in that region if it's going to be the remote T setup. Yeah, that's a good point there.
Yeah, you just write it down a little bit in a business plan, right? What is your relationship with your pool operators? How do you want to communicate with them? What are you looking for, right? I'm looking for 16-year-olds in their parent basement who have gigabit internet and a gaming computer and that want to double click a button, right? And,
Yeah.
And if they don't perform well enough, I just boot them, and that's it.
Well, I've given a little bit of thought too into it. It's sort of almost. I mean, I was thinking maybe the responsibility of an orchestrator to partner with transcoders. We've been kind of notorious for running one really awesome node most of the time, and but we do struggle with trying. Overnight we don't get a lot of streams and things like that. And then of course we have this transcoding density issue we're trying to solve. So yeah, and there was only 100 slots on the board, so it seems that there's a role for us to play as orchestrators, to try to engage with people who are interested in transcoding, and there's more people that now interested than ever trying to do that. And if we can facilitate that, then we've just improved the quality of the network overall, I think. And another concept there, might just be something like I don't know, sign up form on your website or something that people can apply to join the type of a transcoding pool. Got some ideas around that for broadcasters even too. But
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Just like a little survey, ask them what their setup is, what they're looking for, and get them onboarded that way.
Yeah, that's how I started. I just had a Google form, and people would just like apply and tell me what they got and where they are, and then they would give me the SSH keys into their machine, and I would launch the orchestrator for them. And then I would point my DNS to their machine. But I found it wasn't very scalable. It just took a lot of my time. So you'd have to, if you can automate that, then that would be the way to go, I think. But I like your idea of using on-chain stuff for calculating payouts. That's actually a really good idea. I never thought of that.
yeah, it's really an innovation with the remote, the ability to do a dummy account. It's time to maybe rethink a couple things.
I had an issue. So one of the way I have some of my I have my partnerships with Ben and with Garden State Node is as it's based off of like when they win a ticket they get paid, and it's based off a proportion of that. Granted, if we can automate that accounting, that'd be wonderful because it's a pain in the ass right now. But the one thing is like even though like there's a time frame where Ben had won like 15 tickets over the course of like maybe 2 months or so, and then the other person who was getting the other 50% of the streams was getting zero. So it was like part of me started to feel bad. I was like, I'm literally taking from both. I'm paying one because the other person just gets a super unlucky streak. So if you're paying people based on like on-chain stuff and just based on, and granted, yes, it makes sense where you're saying I will pay you for what you produce, and if you produce nothing, you don't get paid. But
Right.
so hit a bad streak, and you're like, I kind of feel bad about this.
Yeah, I think the key to that is that dummy transcoder. If I'm not mistaken, when you have so each orchestrator address is kind of how the payments get calculated up. So rather than having your same orchestrator account deployed in multiple places or something like that, which is also insecure, you would have your dummy accounts, and you could have a separate dummy account for each of your partners, those transcodes. And I think the way that will play out is that the tickets will be automatically awarded based off the work that they actually do. They'll just get sent to your orchestrator account. If I'm not correct, I hope I'm correct about that, and we'll see how it goes. But I think that's the way it'll go. It kind of automates that accounting for you. Hopefully, would avoid that situation.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna set up 2 new addresses and distribute them to divide that up because I do have both. Like basically, I have an account. I have like one account that's a dummy account, and it has like $3 in ETH in there,
and that's how it does all the rewards. Take that to go and be like, all right. So a lot easier.
And does anyone currently do like reward call sharing with transcoders in a private pool? I wasn't clear on, if it didn't seem like it was appropriate. It could be a competitive edge or something, but gamification, like you were talking about, Titan, it sounded like an element there. But in general, it seems like that's more just to cover the operations of the business, so to speak.
I would highly recommend doing some sort of LPT uptime reward.
Okay.
Yeah, because so Livepool doesn't do that, and I mean that's why I left, because I was like, well, I'm not getting any work, and I don't get anything for being in here. Whereas my pool, I mean, the way I created my pool is I wanted to scratch my own itch, right? So I was like, I just want something for being online, just something, like even if it's like just almost nothing, like even if it's just a little tick box saying, hey, I received some sort of reward, right? And so I pay per stream capacity per hour to my transcoders who are connected. So if they have a capacity of 20, then they receive 0.002 LPT per hour. If they have a capacity of 80, they have 0.8 LPT per hour, whatever, right? That's how I calculated that. And people really enjoy that, I will say.
How are you determining their capacity? Is it based off of what the benchmark comes in at? Because, like, for example, you go on Livepool and there's like someone who has like, say 3,500 capacity for streams, and then they can take advantage of that. Or is it based on your benches?
It's based on the benchmark. So when you fire up the machine, it's very slow, very annoying. I know people complain about it. Actually, the only one that complains about it is Papa Bear, which isn't here. But it increases the stream benchmark by 1, and if you can do like 40 sessions, it takes like over an hour. But that way I know that when you hit 40, I know you can actually do 40, and so you get paid per that 40. And that's the benchmark doing that. And it saves that information, so you obviously don't have to benchmark every time. But yeah, you can also override it. Like most people don't know how to use flags. If you just put -max sessions, you can set it to whatever you want. But I do have a limit at 200, just so that people aren't gaming me. I had one. Some guy put like 10,000, and he was getting like 1 LPT per hour, or like 20 LPT per hour or something on my. And I was like, oh, there's a bug. So I kicked him and made the session limit to 200. But most people just stick with the amount that the benchmark tells them to take, so it's kind of nice.
And that's neat that you've got some software that you built around that. Is that just wrote with Go or C# or
Python?
Okay.
Yeah, it's Python. It's all written in Python, and then I use PyInstaller as the compiler.
That's a favorite.
Yes.
I know that one well.
Yes. So that's this has been my first Python project I ever made. So I hired a tutor, and he's been helping me, and yeah, it's been fun.
Good work with that.
Yeah. My wife's
Yeah,
like,
that's awesome, man.
why are you staying up so late on your computer? I'm like, I swear to God, honey, I'm just programming. But I am. My tutor's in Pakistan, so I got to work with his time zone too, right? So, but yeah, no, Python. This was my first Python project, so seems to be working all right.
Where'd you find the tutor?
Upwork.com.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah. Formerly known as Elance.
Lovely.
Yeah, so no, I don't know. I just wanted to scratch my own itch, and I started adding a bunch of features that I liked, like the 1 segment, 2 segment, 3 segment, 4 segment, like performance. So I can see all the transcoders, like, and then it also reports back to me their local real time on their benchmark. So this was a problem I had also. Well, this won't be a problem anymore, but ETH mine, people do dual mining ETH, that was a big problem. I'm glad that that problem's basically over. But yeah, people were they would do the benchmark when they're not mining, so they get like 20 sessions, and then they would start mining, and their machine couldn't do one. So my pool does a background benchmark of 1 every 10 minutes to make sure that you in fact can handle more streams. But I don't think that's as necessary anymore.
Cool.
There you go. Cool. The last topic we should cover before we sign off is free transcoding set by NFT dynamic locking prices. Syrinx node. Tell us a little bit. I know you went on a rant earlier, but tell us a little bit more about what your thought process here was.
Yeah, so the idea here, and granted this might not be a problem, but the idea is reducing friction between, I guess, in the process of broadcasters wanting to request dedicated transcoding services from a specific orchestrator, or vice versa. So both on the side of like broadcasters wanting to request simply, and then orchestrators wanting a simple way to advertise sort of a negotiated rate. So that, and the idea of doing that in like an NFT. So I'm saying I want either X peak hours or this much duration of transcoding in a simple package. So it's more of a click and buy with one transaction as opposed to going back and forth on Discord.
And that would be built in, you said, to the
Let's say it would be. There's a feature kind of close to this that's been proposed and partially built in Studio, in terms of making it easier for broadcasters to request sort of a free trial of transcoding minutes. But yeah, let's say it's built in. So say you had a dashboard where you could see proposed rates by orchestrators if you were a broadcaster, or there could be a simpler way to solidify a contract of sorts that would be an agreement over a certain period of time for transcoding with the specific orchestrator.
Wow, I like it.
And
Although-
you're saying NFT to do that versus a smart contract?
Well, an NFT, just because that there's already at Livepeer, we already have a pretty good interface for, I guess, building like dashboards with this kind of a mechanism. So you could just have a contract, but the cool thing with an NFT is, admittedly, as goofy as it is you could say, here's something that shows this agreement in clear terms that you can push back and forth. So that would be the only reason to make any of this an NFT.
You're just basically trying to like keep metadata, which is like the paper agreement, if you will.
Yeah, well, and just making the interface a bit more approachable.
Okay.
So yeah, so it in its simplest form, it would be a way, as a broadcaster, you could go to a transcoder and say, I want an hour of free transcoding to see, either just to try out my app or just to use, or to see how good your services are for where I plan on producing content. And the idea is that you could just do that automatically. So if, say, you set a flag, and then you agree to a duration you're willing to give away, and then any broadcaster who wants that can go and request that, and then without you having to talk to them, they get that allotment. And if they like that allotment, let's say this works well, then you could provide special pricing in packages or in some unit in the form of this kind of NFT gateway as well. So you could say, yeah, if you want a lot of capacity really quickly, where I'm going to push streams off, but I know you're going to provide a certain duration, that you can buy this NFT, and then I'll provide dedicated services for a day or a week, or something like that.
I really like this idea. I just want to throw out there, as we were developing the price per broadcaster, implementation, thinking about the value of it, one of the things that came to my mind was just having like a sign up form on the website, trying to onboard broadcasters, try before you buy kind of thing. And realizing there are some limitations to it, kind of like what we saw with Transmittal, where if you're broadcasting to just one orchestrator, the experience could be good or bad, and hopefully it's good. But there probably maybe other ways to configure that. But I hadn't thought about the NFT concept, and also considering that payments are off chain today currently. So how would you track that part? I mean, I know we could build something that's distributed, web server based to probably measure plenty of that and actually implement it with what we have built already. But NFT adds another layer of complexity and also just design complexity.
Definitely. And admittedly, like personally, I'm not really a fan of the whole NFT angle. But I think it, like you said, it provides a curious kind of on-chain mechanism to handle a proof of an agreement or so. Pretty much the reason I thought about this is I have a friend who's a front-end designer, and he got really fed up with having to maintain a database and all of his own infrastructure for understanding who he'd sold like front-end assets to, like React components, basically. And as a joke, he minted all of them as a limited run of NFTs. And I guess certain front-end designers are so lazy. He said, yeah, they were all like, for some reason, excited to buy them as NFTs. And then it was great because I had a series of contracts that just kind of handled this whole permissioning problem for me so that I didn't have to maintain a database of like who had agreed to own these assets for a week or a year or who had renewed them. And so in my engineer brain that also basically hates NFTs, I think it's a cool way to like offload infrastructure of this kind.
Yeah.
And it's also like I hate to keep saying that I think it's dumb, but it's kind of cool because you can say, yeah, like it's equivalent to saying here's an index card signifying the agreement that I'm going to give you, for instance, 20 hours of dedicated transcoding time every Thursday at this time. So it could be that specific, or it could be here's this many hours of time at this price with no guarantees of immediacy. So yeah, so as an interface to just remove a little bit of friction in between someone trying to say, here's an offer, etc. I think it's kind of cool. Of course, once you get too specific to a point, it defeats the whole purpose because the amount of back and forth is kind of the same. But yeah, so still a very rough idea, but I'm glad it sort of resonates.
No, it's a good
actual,
one.
A real use case for an NFT. I never thought I'd see the day.
Yeah, and there isn't obviously a Web3, Ethereum Commons interface for Livepeer in the code, so you can interface with those NFTs or contracts. I've given this a lot of thought from the broadcaster side too, right? And I think there are some websites already working into this, but kind of the idea of where you have DeFi like Uniswap today. Think of like Livepeer in that context. If users could put their own money into a broadcasting account and it just turns on for them, and they can broadcast from that. DeFi, that part of the payments infrastructure, which I think is kind of cool. Versus today, where it's like the person who owns the website's got to manage all the finances of usage.
Definitely. Well, and I think this is like very even another level of like abstraction above, but it's cool to imagine there could be a time where you'd have kind of a liquidity pool actor here that would be willing to fund scaling of certain kinds of content where, so you could say like, yeah, here are my dedicated credits that I've like put money in the line for, and then I'll just offload the problem of managing burst scaling to a liquidity pool that will then own sort of these like futures of transcoding capability, or that might already own like burst capability. And then if someone needs it, they could say, oh yeah, like we'll provision that. And of course, the really complex part of this is understanding who owns it and then how content's flowing through it. Which in some ways isn't really complex, but as soon as you have like a third party providing ownership on someone's behalf, it definitely gets complex. But yeah, I mean, it just seemed interesting because like, you know, the token gating, like we have a really nice interface for that that's been built really well. And I thought, you know, it'd be cool to reuse that somewhere in kind of a different context. But yeah, I'll keep churning. I mean, obviously this is like beyond backlogged. But I thought it was an interesting hypothetical to think about.
I think we'll start to see some of those implementations of, you know, just like free trials and stuff for broadcasters with orchestrators, or, you know, here you can test out our infrastructure with a limited configuration, you know, here pretty soon as we get our latest code rolled out. So I think from then you'll kind of have a model you can kind of think a little deeper about what that would look like. It would be neat to bring that into the Web3 space, take it on chain.
Definitely agree. But yeah, thanks for providing some feedback there. I'm glad the idea isn't entirely unhinged. And the irony to me is that came out of me generally like rolling my eyes at 98% of every NFT thing I see. But yeah.
There you go. I think anything to open up the markets. Do you think that something like this would increase the amount of broadcasters we get? Or is this something that is just a nice feature to have?
A little bit of both. Like as I said, like Livepeer Studio has something kind of in the running that's really similar to this, but only for that like initial free trial of minutes to use. So in terms of people just trying to get up and running quickly, it's definitely kind of a point of friction for now. And I think we'll just have to wait and see once, you know, there's more demand for transcoding to see how, like, what other friction points arise, and then see if this kind of a solution would make sense. Because right now it's probably like complete overkill. But yeah.
Yeah, it could help funnel broadcasters in a little better in the future. Definitely.
Very cool. All right. Well, where are we at for time here? Okay, I think we covered all the topics. Get that one. Okay, free transcoding set by NFTs, hard drives, price per broadcaster, and what's going on. I guess, Brad, did you give an update on your price per broadcaster? Where are you at with it?
Yeah. So this morning we requested review from the Livepeer core team. We were just kind of really tying off loose ends, I think, over the last couple iterations that me and John worked on it. It's implemented. We were testing it. Sorry, trying to catch my thoughts right now. It doesn't, as Tight said before, it doesn't change anything how it works before you implement this change. So you can still set your base price. Could be the price that you want, and that'll apply to every broadcaster that interacts with your node. But if you want to offer a free trial or offer a different price, you can do that now. You just got to get the ETH address of the broadcaster, and you put that in, and it'll use that price for that broadcaster until you change it, basically. John, I'm sure I missed something. Did I miss anything?
Oh, that's pretty much right. Some of the nicer interfaces I would say is, you know, you do have the Livepeer CLI has been updated with an option in the menu. So you'll see both the base price, you know, plus you can it'll list each broadcaster's address and the price per pixel. And the setting includes both the price per pixel and the pixels per unit. So those are the two values you can currently set with it. Thinking about like these free entry options for people, like free trials, one of the things that comes to mind would be an option that would allow you to limit the number of streams that somebody could send under that setting. That might be an important thing to prevent like abuse of, so somebody doesn't send you like a whole lot of work for free or at a low rate all at once. It'd be like a nice add-on, I think. But yeah, and then there's also a web interface. So if you're talking about implementing that through a website where somebody can sign up and it just automatically updates your Orchestrator's pricing with the new ETH address, that's the mechanism. We talked about the way to properly implement this. I think it would also include like an authentication hook. I'm not too familiar on the details of that, but I mean, as far as what we're aiming to do with the reliability and performance dashboard, this definitely facilitates that. And so orchestrators can basically just provide either a JSON file or a CLI flag. They can use the price for broadcast or CLI flag, and it is a glob of JSON that would go in that CLI flag. So probably best to use a file. And yeah, we should be able to move forward to the next phases of the project as soon as we get this merged to master and into a release. Even before then, I think we could move before it gets released. If anyone has any questions about how that works, I can give some more detail or anything.
I don't know, but I'm pretty excited for it.
It's been a really great experience getting familiar with Go and then learning all these GitHub mechanisms, and yeah, I mean practically everything was the first time for me, other than just working with GitHub in general. So, but it's taken a little bit of time. I've had other stuff going on with work, and it's taken us longer than expected. But I definitely feel like I've got the right tools to do future development on Livepeer at this point. So it's been fun.
Very cool. Great. All right. Well, we're just about at the hour. I do see we have Mitch Softster who has joined us. Mitch, do you feel like introducing yourself? I know we haven't introduced you yet.
Yeah, I attend some past community call. So I'm a video game developer, and I'm here to know if there is something built on Unity to live streaming. I want to hack it Bogota applying Livepeer on Unity.
Oh wow, that's very cool. Yeah, you're going to Bogota for the upcoming hackathon? Is that correct?
Yeah, for it Bogota and DevCon.
Very cool. Well, either way, we're rooting for you. Very excited to have you join us today. Hopefully there was some information. Do you have any questions or comments while you're here? Do you have any topics we can cover up as we wrap up here?
Oh, not really.
Cool. No worries. Well, great to have you here, and welcome to the community as always. Okay, well, that's the end of the water cooler chat. We're just coming up to the end of the second hour, so we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for coming and joining us, and yeah, thank you so much. We will see you all next week. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.